am very annoyed at WWE because they kept referring to last night's episode of SmackDown as WrestleMania SmackDown when they could have called it SmackDown-a-Mania. So now I have to live with this for the rest of my stupid life. Thankfully, they then brought balance to the force because they told us that Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair is going to be main eventing night one of WrestleMania, and this was absolutely the right thing to do. Representation is important, and we should have been doing this around about 78 years ago, but better late than never, but better never late. But even with all that, we have one last WWE show to give the good bits up and the bad bits down before we do get to WrestleMania, the show of shows, the granddaddy of them all, and it is WrestleMania SmackDown. I mean, all the stupid names that WWE has come up with, and this one doesn't get any love at all. Either way, let's up those downs. Man, WWE has done such a good job with Daniel Bryan. I mean, a huge reason for this is because Daniel Bryan is just the most likable man on the planet, and as soon as you see him and he starts talking, you're like, damn it, I want you to win. It also brings up that whole question about 7 years ago, how WWE failed to realize that this was their guy. I mean, he came out here for a promo wearing what I think was a t-shirt of a sloth dressed like Wolverine. Who can't get behind that? He was out here for the opening promo of SmackDown, or WrestleMania SmackDown, SmackDown-a-Mania, and his big thing was, while he's so excited for WrestleMania and he's excited for his match, what he's most excited for is the fans, because there's going to be 25,000 people actually making noise. And I totally agree with this. Even though I'm quite pumped for a lot of the matches, the thing I can't wait for the most is just seeing real humans go, yeah, boo, yeah, boo. This has double meaning for Daniel Bryan, though, because he's about to win the Universal Championship in front of these fans as they chant yes. And this is what he focused his promo around. And it was a little bit like watching Sesame Street. Because even though he has been associated with the word yes, his whole career, he's always been told no. Am I going to be able to make it to WWE? No. Am I going to be able to be a world champion? No. Am I ever going to main event WrestleMania? No. Will I ever be able to wrestle again? No. Thankfully though, he has always told himself yes, and he's on the cusp of doing that again by not only main eventing WrestleMania for a second time, but becoming the champ once more. No word of a lie, this was absolutely tremendous, and by the end of it I was like, man, I want Daniel Bryan to win. But as a small spoiler, we also had promos from Edge, and we also had promos from Roman Reigns, and by the end of this SmackDown I was like, well, I'm in a bit of a pickle, because I actually want all of them to be victorious and have some kind of like three-way champion. And that doesn't even make any sense. He obviously ended it all by saying, am I going to be champion in the WrestleMania? Yes, and then he did the chant, and then I started doing it as well. It wasn't even intentional, it was like mob mentality. I just got caught up with the madness. Also, just as a quick side note too, realistically, I don't have a clue who is going to win. I mean, I'd love to see Daniel Bryan get the nod, but again, there's arguments for Roman Reigns, there's arguments for Edge. So once more, WWE, round of applause for this build. It's pretty flubbing good. Cut to a Street Profits interview after this who were also chanting yes, but then they were attacked by Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, and then the Mysterio was here and Alpha Academy was here, and they all just started to have a big brawl that started in the back and spilled out to the entranceway, but it was very handy time-wise because it was time for our Fatal 4-Way SmackDown Tag Team title match. As you'd expect as well, it was just really fun. And of course it is a shame that it wasn't able to be on WrestleMania itself, but I get it, there's only so much time and there's only so many slots, but I was still surprised that Robert Roode and Dolph Ziggler held onto their tag team titles. I mean, I don't really know why, I just presumed they would change hands, but like usual, I was wrong. Roode and Ziggler were in charge at first as they worked over Dominic Mysterio, but then Chad Gable blind tagged himself in, and he started to beat up Dominic too. I just sat there like, man, poor Dominic, this poor boy, who's like 23. Thankfully, Daddy was in his corner, so Dominic got the tag to Rey Mysterio, which meant for a few minutes, we got Chad Gable versus Rey. And why the hell haven't we done this feud? We should have done it yesterday. I mean, when I was watching it, I was like, man, this is so beautiful. It's like observing birds. I've never observed a bird in my life, but I guess robins are kind of cool. The tag klaxon then sounded and everybody was in the ring hitting their moves, including the Mysterios doing dives onto Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. And then back in the ring, Alpha Academy were done with Dominic, and now they were working over Montez Ford, and I swear, he's always the other guy that gets his ass whipped. He was able to get out of this by reversing a famous hit into a powerbomb, and that was a pretty cool spot for. He then got the hot tag to Angelo Dawkins, and of course, this being professional wrestling, Angelo Dawkins ran wild. That didn't last long though either, because then Ray snuck back in the ring, and the Mysterios hit tandem 619s, and Dominic hit a frog splash, and they were actually about to win until the pinfall was broken up at the last moment. And I don't know why I want a father-son tag team champion pairing, but I've decided that I do. Ford then hit one of these ridiculous dives over the top rope that just defies gravity, and it was actually quite hard to keep up with it at this point. It was a bit like a guessing game, because everybody was just blind tagging everyone else, and I was like, I have absolutely no idea who the legal man is. It did end up with Gable and Roode though, and because Gable had already been hit by another splash courtesy of Montez Ford and been super kicked by Dolph Ziggler, Bobby was just like, well, he's just laying on the floor, and he pinned him for the 1-2-3 to retain their tag team titles. And yes, it is a shame that Chad Gable always seems to take the losses in these scenarios, but do not forget, a year ago, we were calling him Shorty G, the walking biscuit, so at least we're making progress. Just a top interview with Bianca Belair followed, where she essentially stood there and was like, man, I'm a great babyface. Because she says she's got the jitters for tomorrow, but that's not a bad thing, it just means she's excited. And when all is said and done, she's gonna be the new SmackDown Women's Champion because she's the EST of WWE. Why the hell didn't we just focus on stuff like this the whole time? Big E then took this ball and ran with it too, because he was going back to his old stomping grounds, including his barbers, to let Apollo Crews know that come the weekend, all of his dreams are gonna die. He also told this story about playing in Raymond James Stadium, where of course WrestleMania is located this year, and how he had a great time at high school and that he never forgot where he came from, even though Apollo's only just figured out where he was. Again, these two things back to back, I was like, man, you should have been doing this for the last few weeks. It got me damn well excited, and it's getting it up. Promo video for Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton aired next, and I do think we're just gonna do a basic, straightforward singles match, and surely that has to baffle your brain. And then it was everything with the SmackDown women's titles, and unfortunately not much has changed there. It is still such a mess. Down. For UC, it was no one meaner than Tamina taking on Nia Jax, and after a few minutes, Shayna Baszler just decided, oh no, I think Nia's going to lose, so I'm going to get in there and cause the disqualification. Bring down the DQ board. That is number 18 since the start of the year. Which actually, for WWE, isn't that bad. I've kind of shot myself in the foot. We then cut to the back, and there was going to be an interview with everybody else involved in this tag team turmoil thingamajig that we're getting on night one of WrestleMania. And we learned that Billie Kay and Carmella are going to be another team, along with the Riot Squad and everybody else. And then once more, they all just started to fight. It kind of ended with Natalya and Tamina, nobody meaner, standing tall, so I presume they're not going to win the tag team titles. And we could have done so much more with this, but it just feels so rushed, and it feels so last minute. I don't understand why we didn't give these performers a little bit more respect. I mean, when it comes to Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose, I have no clue what they did to justify being in the number one contender slot. And a really cool video for Seth Rollins and Cesaro next, which was the last thing for their build before WrestleMania, but it had been paid for by the friends of Seth Rollins, and I got a massive kick out of this. And then Edge was sitting in a chair in the ring and cut a flipping damn good promo. Up. And much like Bryan earlier, this was just pure fire coming out of his mouth as he told us every single dream he had in his life, he made sure manifested into reality, and nobody else can understand that because nobody can do what Edge does. In fact, the only thing in his career that wasn't on his terms was the ending because he was forced to retire, which is why at WrestleMania 37 in the main event, he has to rectify this and reclaim what he believes is his. Radar Superstar then started flinging insults at his opponents, and he called Daniel Bryan something like an indie wrestler bookstore wannabe, and I really kind of think we have to drop that now. Daniel Bryan, as already mentioned, is about to main event WrestleMania for the second time. I think whatever his independent roots were, well, they are long gone. He a WWE superstar. His barbs towards Roman Reigns were much better though, because he was like, you're just a Samoan version of me. I mean, you hit the spear, you used to come through the crowd, you started off in a 3-man group, you may walk around WWE like your crap don't stink, but I know all about you, Reigns, and that's why I'm gonna whip your ass. He did make a very good point. Finished it off by reminding everybody that he had come back from an impossible injury that nobody could ever come back from, which is why he will be victorious on Sunday night. And I'm so pumped and I'm so plugged in for this main event. Sometimes all you gotta do is give a good talker a microphone and they'll talk me into the building. It's almost as if that's why it's called a promo. Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce then fell out backstage. It was almost as if this segment was meant to air before the tag team match, because Sonya was like, I don't think it's very fair that Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode have to defend their tag team titles tonight. And I was like, wait a minute, I thought we'd already seen it. And she's also annoyed that Adam Pearce turned the main event at WrestleMania 37 into a triple threat. So my prediction is Sonya Deville will soon be in sole charge of SmackDown, and Adam Pearce will be the sole runner of Raw. I'm alright with that. I think it makes sense. Sasha Banks then responded to Bianca Belair, and she was great being the boss character and all arrogant and saying she can retain her title. And then we had a video for Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley. So yeah, large portions of this SmackDown were just serving as an advert for WrestleMania, which is probably why we called it WrestleMania SmackDown. I'll get over it eventually. Some matches did have proper angles though, including Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. And honestly, who the hell saw this coming? Because Sami Zayn was in a boxing gym with both Paul brothers, that being Logan and Jake, and he was all like, guys, I love you, I'm so excited to be here. Why don't I get my gym stuff and we can have a little spar? And while Jake Paul didn't say anything here, that guy, if he ever did come into the world of pro wrestling, would be the biggest heel. Even his face, you just want someone to smack him. Sami Zayn then got locked out of the place and they wouldn't let him back in because of course the Paul brothers were like, we want nothing to do with that dude, he's crazy. And then back in the arena, the Thunderdome, as Michael Cole and Corey Graves laughed about this, Sami Zayn came back out and was just yelling at them saying, this is a conspiracy, this is the media doing what they want to do and not showing the whole footage. I won't stand for it. Kevin Owens then came out, they had a fight to the back, and I tell you this, Sami Zayn may be the MVP of WWE this year. It doesn't matter what you give him, he will find a way to entertain you, and that's why I'm giving it an up. Throughout all of this too, the entrance of the Andre the Giant Battle Royal started to come out, and it was always such a shame when you get like 25 guys that get no entrance whatsoever, and they all just have to walk out to the SmackDown theme tune. I mean, it just screams straight away, we don't think you should care about this lot, but care about the other people that we're gonna shine a spotlight on. With all that said though, not only was this an incredibly entertaining Battle Royal, but it was won by Jey Uso. And I didn't know I want that until I got it, and it made me really happy. Nice, I run down the participants here because I don't want to miss anybody out, and there was a lot of them. We had Tozawa, we had Angel Garza, we had Cedric Alexander, we had Drew Gulak, we had Elias, we had Eric from the Viking Raiders, we had Grand Metalik, we had Humberto Carrillo, we had Jackson Riker, we had Jey Uso, we had Kalisto, we had King Corbin, we had Lince Dorado, we had Mace, we had Murphy, we had Mustafa Ali, we had Ricochet, we had Shelton Benjamin, we had Shinsuke Nakamura, we had Slapjack, we had T-Bar, and we have Tucker. So I can only presume somebody found Tucker in his hole because he just vanished off the face of the earth. Now look, the whole thing, like I say, was really fun, especially when Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander teamed up with each other to throw out Tozawa. And then also, they kind of ended up in a scenario when it was them versus everybody else, and they just ran into the pack like they were superheroes. The problem, however, was that they were then thrown out straight away, so while they just got a little titty bit of something, this is the end of the Hurt Business, and it just feels like such a waste. And because of that, down. Otherwise, the usual dudes were chucked out at the regular intervals, and we had this pretend Lucha House Party reunion, which I don't think anybody cared about. But we did have this tiny spat between Mustafa Ali and Ricochet, which was so good, even though it only went on for about 3.2 seconds, it annoyed me, because why didn't we do more with that feud? Eventually, Ricochet kicked him out. It meant our final four was Ricochet, Baron Corbin, Jey Uso, and Shinsuke Nakamura, and Rick was out of there courtesy of a super kick thanks to Jey Uso, and then Baron Corbin got kicked out of there thanks to Shinsuke Nakamura, which meant your last two was Nakamura versus Jey Uso, which I guess kind of ties into a story that SmackDown has kind of been telling, but not really. It actually seemed like Shinsuke was gonna win too after he hit Jey with the Kinshasa, but I think deep down Jey Uso was like, man, I have to win this, otherwise Roman is gonna stab me, so he mustered up the courage and he threw Shinsuke Nakamura out of there to become the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal winner. That's not what you'd call him. And of course, he was told to go next to the trophy and cross his arms and go, "Ha ha, I'm the new Andre the Giant." Which I assume is what you get when you win. It made me really pleased though, because it's a good summary for the last year or whatever it has been about how Jey Uso has completely transformed his character, and let's hope coming out of WrestleMania, we give him something big. I am a huge fan. Of course, this episode of SmackDown was always going to end with our tribal chief because we'd seen Edge and we'd seen Daniel Bryan, so we had to hear from the head of the table, and my word, he didn't disappoint, and he smashed it out the park too. Roman congratulated Jey Uso, so thank goodness for that. There was a little bit of happiness here, because after that, Reigns was just pissed off about absolutely everything. Because he was pissed that he had to be here on SmackDown, he was pissed that he had to be on a triple threat match in WrestleMania, he was pissed that there weren't enough chairs for him to sit in. But all of this seems very dubious and a bit like people are trying to rob him of his championship, but he's Roman Reigns. He said something like he preps for a 12, so it's easy to be a 10. And honestly, when he was done here, I started thinking maybe I want Roman Reigns to win, even though he's like an egomaniac psychopath. He quickly admitted too that Edge and Daniel Bryan are formidable opponents, but when you break it right down, they're just wrestlers. He's the cornerstone of WWE, and ever since he came back in August of last year, the ratings have gone up because people just want to see him. Turned his attention to these dreamers too and said he doesn't deal in dreams, he deals in absolutes, which is why Daniel Bryan is going down, and Edge isn't going to complete his journey because WrestleMania is all about the tribal chief, and he will win. I mean, he essentially found like 72,000 ways to say, I'm going to be victorious, but every single one was more badass than the last. He then lost his mind and used Paul Heyman's "It's not a prediction, it's a spoiler" line to send all of this home, and WWE, like I say, could not have done a better job with this. I mean, genuinely, search your feelings like you're a Jedi. Can you truly 100% call who's going to win here? No, you can't, and that should be the goal of every single WrestleMania main event. So I just can't wait for it. It was just so good, and actually this SmackDown as a whole did a great job in building to WrestleMania, which was not how I felt after Raw. Kind of sums up those two shows the last few months, and it's getting it up. Now don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of SmackDown or SmackDown-a-Mania. That's right, I'm putting it in here. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com so you can read all the news about WrestleMania. Follow us on social media, and if you want to watch more videos here on the channel, there's boxes right now flying around my head. My name is Simon for WhatCulture. Thank you very much for joining me as always. Make sure you're pumped and ready for WrestleMania, and I'll see you tomorrow when we up those downs for night 1. And then we'll be back on Monday when we up those downs for night 2. Let's do it.